So you've decided to slay the monster. You've decided to tackle the T206 set, but you don't even know where to begin. This is the perfect video for you because today we're going to talk about the Super Print 6, and as well, I'm going to show you these 6 cards from my own personal collection. But now, why is understanding this information so important? It's important from my perspective because it's one of the big hurdles I had when it came to first trying to understand and learn T206. When you go to your next card show, or when you think back to your last experience at a card show, when it came to dealers with pre-war, you saw these cards all the time, and you saw them with, at times, probably very high price tags, and it's all you saw. So if you didn't understand or don't know much about T206, your perspective is all of the cards are this expensive, when in reality, this is not the true part of T206. These cards look good on a table, they do sell for a lot of money, but they don't tell the true story around T206. They just tell part of the story. So now, backtracking just a little bit to understand and explain how we get to someone being considered a super print card. In T206, as of today, and I don't expect this to change in the near future, there are 37 different accepted backs of the cards. In T206, most players, some players have as little as 3 or 4 backs, some have 10 or 12, but not a single player has a card with every single back. That's key number 1 here. Key number 2 here is these 6 players were not included in the very first printing of T206 in 1909. So any of the 150 series backs, these cards are not included in. But these 6 players have right now an approximate 25 different backs of them. So this is why you see these cards all over the place. And just to slow it down for one quick second here, taking a look at that entire list of backs for the Super Print 6, starts at the very top, American Beauty 350, Carolina Brights, Cycle, Drum, EPDG, Old Mill, Piedmont 350, Polar Bear, Sovereign 350, Sovereign 460, the list of sweet caps, and then of course ending in Tolstoy. You will see there, though, not all of the cards available in all of the backs, at least from a confirmation perspective. Broadleaf 350, Broadleaf 460 are not all of the cards. Same with Red Hindu, Black Linux. So now, what are the 6 players? One player actually has 2 cards on this list of 6. So in reality, it's only 5 players from a Super Print 6 category. But this is a name for some modern collectors they may never have heard of, because he was basically blackballed from baseball. But I would highly recommend, when you have a moment this year, pick up Hal Chase book, The Black Prince of Baseball. This is an excellent read. I'm about halfway through, and so it just shows you and tells you how big of a player Hal Chase was, and it also really explains why Hal Chase has 2 cards on this list. Oh, and one quick side note on the book. I'll include a link to the book below on Amazon, but do not buy the Kindle version. There are errors upon errors in the book. It's awful. I had to return it and return back to the physical book. So do not buy the Kindle version of that Hal Chase book. Also included here, we have one of my favorite players. We have Frank Chance. Then we have Ty Cobb, Johnny Evers, and then ending the list here we have Christy Mathewson. But which variation of theirs is considered a Super Print 6? Let's go through Hal Chase right now. Now, the interesting note about Hal Chase is he is the only player in the entire T206 set with 5 different cards. But when we look specifically at the Super Print 6, first one here is the Blue Portrait. Now, what you'll see on the screen there is graded population numbers for both PSA and SGC. This is not a grading video. This is just meant to show you the scale of how many are available of these cards versus its peer. So PSA, for example, has graded on average of the 520, 553 cards. Hal Chase has 1,153 here, and an SGC 764. Now, unlike that Hal Chase blue portrait, which doesn't really have a story as to why I bought it, I just bought it for my polar bear set. This Hal Chase black cap variation was purchased because this is part of the Charles Bray collection. He was a friend of Jefferson Burdick. There is really no premium for these cards. They're cool, they're neat. I do though wish PSA, if they let, or if they had people have their provenance on the flip, that you could search their database by that, but you cannot. But here again, interesting, PSA graded 1,153 and then SGC 776. So Hal Chase, non-Hall of Famer, these two cards are available over 2x more than the average T206 by PSA. Next up, we have an actual Hall of Famer here. We have Johnny Evers, Chicago on shirt and with a bat. This is an SGC 1. I bought this card for one reason back in 2020, and it's not because of the fact that it has great presentation, which it does. It's what is on the back of the card. So when you flip it over here, it says right there, 1 from GK. And on the bottom here, when you look at it under magnification, it looks like a date of 11/22/1911. So that one is not confirmed, but it's really cool to think about the fact that someone won this card in some fashion from GK and they wrote it on the card. I'll never be able to track back this provenance, but this is that amateur level of writing I love on a card because it speaks to a story, and this card has been in my collection now for nearly 5 years. But when you look at the grading numbers here, PSA 1,379 and SGC 924, so no surprise here, being a Hall of Famer. I really hope you're enjoying the look at the Super Print 6 right now. If you could do me a huge favor and hit that thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate it. Now we get into some real cool cards. This is my very first ever T206 Polar Bear, Frank Chance. This is the one I talk about all the time. This is the one that set me off on my Polar Bear journey, my T206 journey back in 2019. Trimmed to death, rusty, damaged, but man, it presents well, and I absolutely love the look of this card overall. But when you look at the grading numbers for PSA as a Super 6, 1,519, and then on SGC 1,096. So you are going to see this card on a table 3 times more than you will see any other T206 in the set. You won't see this one though, because this one is never leaving my collection. Now coming in next is going to be the card at the time was my most expensive purchase ever in the T206 set. I purchased this card raw for $255. You will see it has some absolutely wonderful, I would call it, polar bear tobacco staining on it. You have the indentation right there, where maybe a rubber band or some sort of string held another stack of T206 cards together back for an early age collector. But overall, obviously this came back as a SGC 1, not really the point of the video here, but when you look at the population of Christy Mathewson dark cap, you're looking at 1,802 for PSA and SGC 1,313. So almost 4x availability versus the average T206 card. And now for the card that's been graded the most, but it doesn't mean it's been printed the most. We have Cobb Red Portrait. This is the card that completed my T206 Polar Bear set back in December of 2023. You will see from a grading perspective on PSA 2,594, SGC 1,561. So it's a 5-to-1 ratio Cobb Red Portrait versus every other T206 card out there in the set. This one for me came back a 1.5. I felt the end result was really strong. It did really well overall. And one footnote here with Cobb and his Red Portrait. Earlier in 2024, the hobby laid its eyes upon for the very first time a Ty Cobb red portrait, and a broadleaf 350. That card sold for $250,000 on REA, and so it goes to show, keep digging, you may find a back that has never been discovered before. So what does all this mean for you today as a modern collector or buyer of T206 cards? Because the American Tobacco Company included these 6 variations on 25 different backs of these cards, that means today you get to have your pick of the litter. There is absolutely no rush to judgment. There is no rush to go buy the next Ty Cobb red portrait or the next Frank Chance yellow. These cards are truly super printed. They are available thousands more than any other T206 card. So spend the time and find the right copy for your collection.